Do you ever think about the things your parents gave you as a baby that are now banned? In the 1970s, these items shaped the earliest days of life, trusted completely by families who never imagined they could harm their children. So what hidden dangers were cradled beside every newborn? Hard plastic baby bottles containing BPA were everywhere in the 1970s, tucked into diaper bags, lined up on kitchen counters, and handed to sleepy newborns without a second thought. Parents loved how durable they were, how easily they washed, and how they never shattered like old glass bottles did. They seemed like the safer choice, the practical choice, the modern choice. But inside that strong plastic was a chemical that slowly seeped into warm milk and formula, especially when heated in hot water or a sterilizer. Researchers would later discover that even tiny traces of BPA could interfere with hormones in infants, affecting development in ways nobody imagined at the time. Parents genuinely believed they were doing the right thing, trusting the packaging, the science, and the stores that sold these bottles by the millions. When the link to endocrine disruption became clear, the shock was enormous. The ban came swiftly, and companies scrambled to replace every design. But the uneasy feeling lingered for years, as parents wondered how something so ordinary had carried a danger no one warned them about. Lead-painted crib railings were once considered perfectly normal in nurseries across the country, their cheerful colors designed to catch a baby's eye and brighten any room. Parents painted cribs with whatever was on sale at the hardware store, never stopping to question what made those paints so glossy and durable. Babies did what babies always do, gripping the rails with tiny fists and gnawing on the painted wood during long teething nights. Nobody realized that each bite transferred tiny flakes of lead directly into their systems, building up silently over weeks and months. Lead poisoning does not announce itself loudly. It creeps in slowly, affecting brain development, causing behavioral changes, and leaving damage that went undetected until much later. Parents who thought they were providing a beautiful space for their newborn were unknowingly creating a source of invisible harm. When researchers traced developmental delays back to these painted rails, regulations banned lead in household paints. By then, countless cribs had already done their quiet damage. It remains one of the most heartbreaking discoveries of the era, a reminder that loving efforts can carry risks. Drop-side cribs without safety locks were once the standard in every nursery, marketed as the smartest solution for tired parents who needed to lift babies during late-night feedings. The side panel slid down smoothly, making it easier to reach a crying infant without straining your back. Families trusted these cribs completely, handing them down through generations. But the hardware that made them convenient was also dangerously flawed. Over time, screws loosened, plastic parts cracked, and rails began to detach without warning. Babies rolled toward the gap, slipped through openings that should have stayed closed, and became trapped between the mattress and the lowered side. The accidents were devastating, often happening silently while parents slept in the next room. Investigators documented case after case of infants who suffocated or strangled in cribs used without incident for years. When the federal government finally banned drop-side cribs entirely, the decision came with an urgency that shocked parents who had never considered the risk. It is haunting to think how many families placed their newborns into something so quietly dangerous. Soft crib bumper pads were once considered essential nursery items, tied lovingly around the inside of every crib to protect tiny heads from hard wooden slats. Parents chose patterns that matched bedding sets, creating cozy nests that looked straight out of magazine nurseries. The padding seemed like common sense, a soft barrier between fragile babies and rigid bars that looked uncomfortable even to adults. Nobody questioned the safety because bumpers looked so gentle, so cushioned, so protective. But what families did not realize was that these soft pads created a suffocation risk that grew every time a baby rolled face first into the fabric. Infants lacked the strength to push away or turn their heads when pressed against something blocking their airway. The very softness that made bumpers appealing also made them deadly. Investigators found that perfectly healthy babies were lost simply because their faces ended up pressed against decorative padding. When regulators finally banned crib bumpers, the decision came with overwhelming evidence that these products caused more harm than they prevented. Bare cribs are now recommended because they offer nothing for a baby to suffocate against. Loose crib blankets and quilts were a standard part of putting a baby to bed in the 1970s, layered over tiny bodies to keep them warm through the night. Grandmothers crocheted special blankets, parents folded quilts around sleeping infants, and nobody imagined something so soft could pose any threat. The image of a baby tucked beneath a handmade quilt felt like the definition of care and comfort. But loose bedding can shift during sleep, bunching up near a baby's face or wrapping around limbs in ways that restrict breathing. Infants cannot push blankets away or reposition themselves the way older children can, and what seems like cozy warmth can quickly become a suffocation hazard. Researchers studying sudden infant death syndrome found that loose blankets were present in a troubling number of cases, leading to urgent recommendations against soft bedding. Today, sleep sacks and fitted sheets are the only items allowed, a stark contrast to the piled blankets of decades past. The shift felt dramatic to families who had always done things the old way, but the evidence was impossible to ignore. Something as innocent as a handmade quilt once carried serious risks. Tris-treated flame-retardant sleepwear was once advertised as the pinnacle of safety, promising to protect children from house fires, one of the biggest fears parents had at the time. These pajamas were soft, colorful, and seemed like the responsible choice, marketed directly to families who wanted their babies to sleep safely. Parents bought them with complete trust, believing that anything labeled flame retardant must be protecting their little ones. But the chemical tris did not stay locked inside the fabric. It rubbed off onto skin, absorbed through contact, and entered the bodies of babies who wore these pajamas night after night. When researchers tested children who had slept in treated sleepwear, they found traces of the chemical in their systems, raising alarms about prolonged exposure. Studies eventually linked tris to serious health concerns, including potential cancer risks that no parent would ever knowingly accept. Regulators moved quickly once the truth surfaced, banning tris-treated sleepwear and forcing manufacturers to recall products already sitting in nursery drawers. Those pajamas became one of the most infamous examples of how good intentions can lead to dangerous mistakes. Mercury thermometers for infant fevers were something almost every parent kept tucked in the medicine cabinet, sitting there like a tiny silver secret no one ever questioned. Seeing that bright metallic line move up and down felt like watching real science happen in your own home, and nobody knew that this simple tool carried a danger far larger than its size. Parents trusted these thermometers because they were reliable, familiar, and passed down through generations. What folks never realized was that one slip, one crack, or one roll off the changing table could release a toxic metal that never goes away. Mercury did not just evaporate harmlessly. It pooled, it lingered, and it seeped into tiny corners nobody noticed. Babies who grabbed at everything within reach could easily put a broken thermometer in their mouths before anyone reacted. Doctors later discovered how dangerous even small exposures were, especially for developing brains and nervous systems. When regulators banned mercury thermometers for household use, families were stunned to learn that something so common had carried such risk. A tool meant to monitor a baby's health once posed a greater threat than the fevers it was measuring. Aspirin for teething and fever relief was once handed to babies as casually as milk, crushed into powder and mixed with juice or rubbed directly onto sore gums. Parents kept bottles within easy reach, trusting that something sold so widely must be perfectly safe for the smallest members of the family. When a baby fussed through the night with a fever or wailed during teething, aspirin seemed like the obvious answer, the same remedy adults reached for when they felt unwell. Nobody questioned it because aspirin had been trusted for decades, passed down as the reliable cure for everything that ached. But researchers discovered a terrifying connection between aspirin and Ray's syndrome, a rare but often fatal condition that caused brain swelling and liver failure, primarily in children recovering from viral infections. The link was devastating, especially for parents who had given aspirin in good faith. When the warnings spread, pediatricians stopped recommending it for young children, and labels were changed to reflect the danger. Today, aspirin is strictly avoided for infants, replaced by safer alternatives, it remains one of the most shocking reversals in pediatric medicine. Honey in baby food and pacifiers was once considered a natural way to soothe fussy infants, a sweetener that seemed far healthier than processed sugar. Parents dipped pacifiers into honey before bedtime, stirred it into homemade baby food, and spread it on teething biscuits without a second thought. Grandmothers swore by it as a folk remedy for colicky babies, and the golden sweetness seemed as innocent as anything from nature. What families did not know was that honey can harbor spores of Clostridium botulinum, a bacterium that produces one of the most potent toxins known to science. Adult digestive systems handle these spores without trouble, but infant intestines lack the defenses to stop them from multiplying. Once inside a baby's gut, the bacteria release toxins that cause infant botulism, a condition that can paralyze muscles, stop breathing, and prove fatal without treatment. When doctors traced cases of infant botulism back to honey exposure, warnings spread quickly through pediatric communities. Today, no honey is recommended for babies under 1 year old, a guideline that would have shocked families who used it freely decades ago. Natural does not always mean safe. Walkers with open stairway access were once proudly wheeled into living rooms across the country, giving babies their first taste of independent movement long before they could actually walk. Parents loved watching their infants scoot across the floor, believing the walker helped build leg strength. The devices seemed like a wonderful bridge between crawling and walking, a way to keep babies entertained while freeing up adult hands. But walkers moved faster than anyone expected, especially on smooth floors or slight inclines. Babies who could barely control their own limbs suddenly had wheels beneath them, racing toward doorways, stairs, and hazards they could never anticipate. The most devastating accidents happened near staircases, where a single moment of distraction sent walkers tumbling down entire flights with babies still strapped inside. Emergency rooms documented skull fractures, broken bones, and worse from falls that happened in seconds. When regulators examined the injury data, the evidence was overwhelming. Bans and strict safety standards followed, transforming a beloved nursery item into a cautionary symbol of how quickly convenience can turn into catastrophe. Vinyl baby bibs with lead-based prints were a staple in the 1970s, draped around the necks of infants at every mealtime to catch drool, formula, and mashed food. Parents loved them because they wiped clean in seconds and came in cheerful patterns that made feeding time feel brighter. What nobody realized was that the colorful designs printed on the vinyl often contained lead-based pigments that flaked off over time. Babies mouthed everything within reach, and bibs sat directly against their chins for hours each day. The soft plastic rubbed against lips and was chewed on during teething, transferring tiny amounts of lead with every meal. Parents had no reason to suspect danger because these bibs were sold everywhere and looked completely harmless. When researchers tested older vinyl products and found alarming lead levels, the findings sent shockwaves through the industry. Regulations tightened, manufacturers reformulated, and families threw away bibs they had trusted for years. It is unsettling to realize that something designed to keep babies clean was quietly exposing them to a dangerous toxin. Plastic teething rings filled with liquid chemicals were marketed as the perfect solution for sore gums in the 1970s, designed to be chilled and handed to fussy babies whenever teeth started pushing through. Parents trusted these rings completely, believing the cold liquid inside provided soothing relief that solid teethers could not match. The colorful fluid sloshing around inside looked cheerful and harmless. But when babies bit down hard or when the plastic cracked from repeated freezing, the liquid could leak directly into tiny mouths. That liquid often contained chemical compounds never meant to be ingested, substances that could irritate delicate tissues or cause harm over time. Parents rarely inspected teething rings for small cracks, and many babies chewed on compromised toys without anyone noticing. When safety investigators traced reports of illness back to leaking teethers, the industry faced intense scrutiny. Regulations now require teething products to meet strict standards, but the memory of those liquid-filled rings serves as a reminder that even the gentlest baby items can hide dangers no parent expects. Car beds without restraints were once the standard way to transport newborns in vehicles. Flat wicker or plastic baskets placed on back seats so babies could sleep during long drives. Parents believed these beds were safer than holding an infant, and in some ways they were right. But the protection they offered was dangerously incomplete. There were no harnesses, no anchors, and nothing to stop the bed from sliding or flipping during sudden stops. Babies lay completely unrestrained, cushioned only by blankets and the hope that nothing would go wrong. Families drove across states with infants resting in these open beds, trusting that careful driving was enough. The reality was far more frightening. In even minor accidents, these beds became projectiles, and babies inside had no protection from impact. When crash testing revealed how vulnerable infants were in these setups, regulators moved quickly to establish car seat standards requiring proper restraints and anchoring systems. The transition saved countless lives, but looking back, it is chilling to realize how many families traveled with newborns in beds that offered little more protection than a basket. Forward-facing car seats from birth were considered acceptable in the 1970s, positioned so that even the youngest infants faced the front of the vehicle like miniature passengers. Parents installed them proudly, believing they were doing everything right by using a car seat at all. The seats had basic padding and simple buckles, but the direction they faced created risks that science had not yet explained. In a collision, a forward-facing infant's head snaps forward with tremendous force, straining the neck and spine in ways tiny bodies cannot withstand. Rear-facing positions distribute crash forces across the strongest parts of an infant's body, but that knowledge came later. For years, families strapped newborns into seats that pointed them toward danger, trusting designs that prioritized convenience over physics. When researchers documented the life-saving benefits of rear-facing travel, car seat guidelines changed dramatically. Today, infants must remain rear-facing for far longer than 70s parents imagined. The shift represents one of the most significant advances in child transportation, born from lessons about what happens when good intentions meet incomplete science. Baby powder with talc was sprinkled liberally at every diaper change in the 1970s, puffing into clouds that settled on changing tables, cribs, and the faces of squirming infants. Parents loved the fresh scent and silky feeling it left on baby skin, believing they were preventing rashes and keeping little ones comfortable. The ritual felt wholesome, a simple act of care repeated millions of times in nurseries across the country. But talc particles are incredibly fine, and when shaken into the air, they drift directly into the breathing zone of anyone nearby. Infants lying on their backs inhaled these particles with every breath, drawing them deep into developing lungs with no defense against foreign matter. Over time, medical researchers connected talc inhalation to respiratory problems and raised serious concerns about long-term exposure. The once beloved powder puff became a symbol of hidden danger, and manufacturers eventually reformulated products to eliminate talc. Today, cornstarch alternatives have replaced the old formulas, but the memory of those fragrant clouds lingers as a reminder that even tender caregiving rituals can carry unexpected risks. Lead-soldered formula cans were a staple in pantries across the 1970s, stacked neatly beside baby bottles as essential supplies for infant feeding. Parents trusted these cans completely, scooping powdered formula day after day without questioning how the containers were sealed. The seams running along the sides were joined with lead solder, a material that seemed sturdy but carried dangers nobody discussed. When formula sat inside these cans, especially in humid conditions, tiny amounts of lead could leach into the powder that parents mixed into bottles. Babies consumed this contaminated formula at every feeding, their developing bodies absorbing a toxin that accumulated silently over weeks and months. Lead exposure in infants causes irreversible harm to brain development, affecting learning, behavior, and lifelong potential. When researchers traced elevated lead levels in children back to formula packaging, the findings prompted urgent changes. Manufacturers switched to safer sealing methods, and lead solder disappeared from food containers entirely. But for families who fed their babies from those earlier cans, the realization came too late to undo the damage already done. Rubber nipples with nitrosamine compounds were attached to baby bottles and pacifiers throughout the 1970s, placed directly into the mouths of infants who sucked on them for hours every day. Parents saw nothing but soft, flexible rubber designed to mimic natural feeding, and they trusted these products without hesitation. What nobody knew was that certain rubber formulations released nitrosamines, chemical compounds that formed during manufacturing and leached out slowly with use. These substances entered tiny mouths with every feeding session, every moment of comfort sucking, every nap with a pacifier tucked against the cheek. Researchers later identified nitrosamines as potential carcinogens, substances that should never contact anyone, let alone vulnerable infants. The discovery sent manufacturers scrambling to reformulate rubber products and find safer alternatives. Silicone nipples eventually replaced the older rubber versions, but the transition took years. For families who raised babies on those original nipples, the knowledge came with uncomfortable weight. Something as simple as feeding time had carried hidden risks that no amount of parental love could have prevented. Infant sleep positioners were marketed as essential safety devices in the 1970s. Wedge-shaped props designed to keep babies sleeping on their sides or backs in what manufacturers claimed were safer positions. Parents bought them believing they were adding protection against the terrifying mystery of sudden infant death. The products looked reassuring, soft foam wedges covered in cheerful fabric, promising worried parents a way to control how babies slept. But these positioners created dangers far worse than the problems they claimed to solve. Babies wiggled and shifted during sleep, sometimes pressing their faces directly into the foam or becoming trapped between the wedges and crib sides. The very devices meant to keep infants safe became suffocation hazards that contributed to deaths no parent anticipated. When investigators examined the evidence, the pattern was undeniable. Regulators banned sleep positioners entirely, warning parents that the safest sleep surface is a flat, firm mattress with nothing else in the crib. The tragedy lies in how many families trusted a product that promised peace of mind but delivered the opposite. Crib mobiles with long, dangling strings were hung above nearly every crib in the 1970s, spinning slowly with colorful shapes that mesmerized babies and gave parents precious moments of peace. The designs were charming, featuring animals, stars, or abstract figures that caught the light and held an infant's attention. Parents believed these decorations stimulated developing minds and helped soothe fussy babies to sleep. What few people considered was that those dangling strings posed a serious strangulation risk the moment a baby grew strong enough to reach up and grab them. Infants develop grasping reflexes early, and anything within reach becomes a target for curious hands. Long strings wrapped around tiny fingers, wrists, and necks with terrifying ease, especially during unsupervised nap times. The accidents happened quietly in the dark, while parents trusted their babies were safe beneath spinning shapes meant to bring comfort. When safety organizations documented the dangers, regulations changed to require shorter strings and breakaway components. Those older versions remain a haunting reminder that even innocent nursery decorations can hide deadly risks. Baby swings without crotch straps were popular throughout the 1970s. Mechanical versions that rocked infants back and forth while parents caught their breath or finished household tasks. The swings had waist straps that seemed secure enough, wrapping around tiny midsections and clicking into place with a reassuring snap. Parents trusted these devices to hold babies safely while the gentle motion worked its soothing magic. But babies are slippery, and without a strap running between the legs, infants could slide downward through the gap between the seat and waist restraint. What began as peaceful swinging could end with a baby's head caught beneath the tray while their body hung suspended, cutting off the airway in seconds. The strangulation risk was invisible until the moment it turned fatal, and many families learned the danger only through tragedy. Investigators traced multiple deaths to this simple design flaw, prompting manufacturers to add crotch straps as mandatory features. Modern swings include multiple restraint points precisely because older versions proved how quickly a soothing device could become deadly. Jumper seats hung in doorways without padding were a beloved fixture in the 1970s, bouncing babies up and down while parents cooked dinner or folded laundry nearby. The devices clamped onto door frames with simple hardware, suspending infants in fabric seats that allowed them to push off the floor. Babies squealed with delight, and parents treasured the hands-free moments these jumpers provided. But the designs had serious flaws that nobody discussed at the time. Door frames were not built to withstand repeated bouncing stress, and the clamps could slip or crack without warning. Babies launched themselves sideways into wooden frames, struck their heads on hard surfaces, or tumbled when the apparatus came loose. The fabric seats offered no head support, leaving necks vulnerable during vigorous bouncing. Emergency rooms documented concussions, fractures, and neck injuries traced back to these devices. When safety standards caught up, jumpers required padding, reinforced mounting, and weight limits. The carefree bouncing of the 70s gave way to carefully engineered alternatives, but not before countless families learned that doorway fun could turn dangerous. Cloth diapers washed with harsh lye detergents were the standard in the 1970s, scrubbed and boiled in solutions strong enough to strip stains from the toughest fabric. Parents believed that cleaner meant safer, and they attacked dirty diapers with chemicals powerful enough to dissolve grease and kill anything. The detergent smelled sharp and industrial, but that scent signaled cleanliness to families with no other frame of reference. What nobody considered was that residue from these harsh chemicals remained trapped in fabric fibers, pressed directly against the most sensitive skin on a baby's body. Infants developed rashes, burns, and irritation that parents blamed on teething or allergies. Doctors treated case after case without connecting the symptoms to laundry practices that seemed perfectly normal. It took years before researchers linked the harsh detergents to chemical burns and skin damage in infants. Gentler formulas eventually replaced the industrial strength cleaners, but many families had already spent months wrapping their babies in fabric soaked with substances harsh enough to damage delicate tissue. Second-hand cribs with wide slat spacing were passed down through families in the 1970s like treasured heirlooms, set up in nurseries with pride and gratitude for the money saved. Parents trusted these hand-me-down cribs because they had already proven themselves safe with older siblings, cousins, or neighbors. The wood was sturdy, the paint was charming, and the family history attached to each piece made it feel special. What nobody measured was the gap between the slats. Older cribs were built to standards that no longer exist, with spacing wide enough for a baby's head to slip through but too narrow for shoulders to follow. Infants who rolled during sleep became trapped, their airways compressed as they struggled against bars that held them in place. The accidents happened silently, discovered only when parents came to check on babies who had stopped breathing. When investigators documented the pattern, new regulations required slat spacing narrow enough to prevent entrapment. But the beloved family cribs that had served generations became dangerous relics, symbols of how safety standards must evolve. Baby oil with mineral oil base for massage was rubbed onto infant skin in the 1970s with loving hands that meant only comfort and care. Parents slathered it on after baths, massaged it into tiny limbs, and trusted that the gentle liquid was nourishing delicate skin the way every advertisement promised. The oil felt silky, smelled pleasant, and made babies glisten like cherubs in a painting. What families did not realize was that mineral oil could be dangerous if it reached places it was never meant to go. Babies spit up, coughed, and occasionally inhaled traces of the slippery substance coating their skin and lips. When mineral oil enters the lungs, it causes lipoid pneumonia, an inflammation that damages respiratory tissue and creates lasting breathing problems. Doctors began connecting cases of unexplained infant respiratory distress back to household products that seemed harmless. The warning spread slowly, and parents gradually shifted to safer alternatives. Today, mineral oil products carry cautionary labels that did not exist in the 70s, reminders that loving touch can carry risks. Infant cereal in bottles from week 1 was a common practice in the 1970s, spooned into formula by parents who believed it would help babies sleep longer and grow stronger. Doctors rarely discouraged it, grandmothers swore by it, and exhausted parents desperate for rest embraced it without hesitation. The thick mixture flowed through enlarged nipple holes, filling tiny stomachs with calories their digestive systems were never designed to handle so early. What nobody understood was that infant digestive tracts need time to mature before processing solid foods. Babies who received cereal too early faced increased risks of choking, allergic reactions, and digestive distress that manifested as colic and discomfort. The practice also contributed to overfeeding, setting patterns that affected health beyond infancy. When pediatric guidelines changed, doctors began recommending that solid foods wait until babies showed signs of readiness. The shift felt dramatic to families who had fed infants the same way for generations, but the evidence was impossible to ignore. What seemed like helpful nourishment was rushing tiny bodies past milestones they needed time to reach. Small Parts baby rattles were among the most beloved toys in any 1970s nursery, colorful shapes that jingled and clattered when tiny hands shook them with delight. Parents gave them to infants without hesitation, watching their babies grip the handles and wave them back and forth with growing coordination. The rattles came in every color and design imaginable, some shaped like animals, others like flowers or simple rings. What made them dangerous was the way they were assembled. Small beads, bells, and decorative pieces were attached with glue or weak plastic joints that loosened over time. Babies explored everything with their mouths, and when a piece broke free, it became a choking hazard that could block an airway in seconds. Emergency rooms saw case after case of infants gasping for breath, and doctors traced the incidents back to rattles that had fallen apart during normal play. Regulators eventually required strict testing for small parts, banning any toy that could release pieces small enough to fit through a testing tube designed to mimic a child's throat. The cheerful rattles that once filled cribs with happy sounds became symbols of how easily joy can turn to tragedy. Tinned fish packed in PCB-laced oil was once considered a healthy, protein-rich option for busy families. Tuna, sardines, and anchovies sat neatly in shiny metal tins, waiting to become quick lunches or midnight snacks. The oil inside kept them moist and flavorful, but it also carried a hidden poison. At the time, convenience was king, and no one thought to question what made those tins last so long on the shelf. Housewives trusted the packaging, the labels, and the smiling faces in the ads that promised ocean-fresh flavor. The irony was cruel. In trying to make food safer from spoilage, manufacturers had filled it with something far worse. Polychlorinated biphenyls, or PCBs, were used in industrial lubricants and electrical equipment. Somehow, they found their way into the oils used for food preservation, contaminating entire batches of canned fish. PCBs did not break down easily. They accumulated in the body, linked to cancers and reproductive harm. At the time, no one had a clue that a simple tuna sandwich could contain a chemical cousin of motor oil. When the scandal finally broke, it rocked the seafood industry and reshaped how food safety was monitored. Factories were overhauled, regulations tightened, and faith in clean eating took a heavy blow. The sea that had fed generations now carried a warning label of its own. Lead acetate hair dyes were the quiet miracle of the 1970s for anyone desperate to cover gray without the harsh look of traditional dyes. These products worked gradually, darkening hair over several applications until the silver strands disappeared into rich, natural-looking color. People loved the subtlety, the way the transformation happened so slowly that nobody could pinpoint exactly when the gray vanished. The creams and liquids were applied with bare hands, massaged into roots, and left to work their magic while families went about their daily routines. What nobody realized was that lead acetate absorbed directly through the scalp with every single application. Lead does not flush out of the body easily. It builds up in bones, blood, and organs, causing damage that often goes unnoticed until symptoms become severe. Children who hugged parents with freshly treated hair absorbed lead residue without anyone suspecting danger. When scientists finally proved the connection between these dyes and lead poisoning, the products were pulled from shelves immediately. The promise of youthful hair had come with a cost nobody ever imagined. Candy cigarettes looked harmless, but they carried a powerful message that shaped an entire generation's habits. Kids mimicked adults, holding the chalky white sticks between their fingers, pretending to take slow drags before puffing out imaginary smoke. They were part of every corner store display, next to bubble gum and jawbreakers, colorful boxes that proudly mirrored real cigarette brands. Back then, it was just make-believe fun, a little way to act grown up. But as health awareness grew and smoking rates dropped, society realized that these candies were more than innocent play. They were marketing addiction wrapped in sugar. The government banned them for encouraging underage smoking and normalizing tobacco culture. Yet for many who grew up in the 70s or 80s, the memory lingers. You can still recall the chalky taste, the white powder coating your lips, the cool swagger of pretending to be older than you were. It was a candy that told kids to dream dangerously, and even though it is gone, its image still smolders like a cigarette that refuses to die out completely. Bare metal playground slides without coatings were once a familiar part of childhood, rising tall and gleaming under the summer sun. Grandparents remember them fondly, climbing the ladder with excitement before racing down at full speed. But these slides had a hidden danger that only revealed itself on hot days. Metal absorbs heat quickly, and by midday the surface could become scorching to the touch. Children sat down expecting fun, and instead burned the backs of their legs, screaming as they slid downward on what felt like a metal griddle. Some kids suffered blisters, and many avoided playgrounds during the hottest months, even though nobody understood the real cause at the time. Falls were common too, since the metal became slick with morning dew or rain. Regulators later required coated surfaces to prevent burns and injuries. Today, these slides are remembered with a mix of nostalgia and disbelief at how dangerous they truly were. Full-fat cheese smothering nachos and pizza was one of the great pleasures of 80s school lunches, thick orange layers that stretched and pulled with every bite. Pizza day meant rectangles of dough buried under blankets of melted cheese glistening under heat lamps, while Nacho Day brought mountains of chips covered in warm cheese sauce dripping from every edge. Kids devoured these meals without a thought about fat content or dietary consequences. Cheese was simply delicious, a food group unto itself that made everything taste better. Schools served it generously because children actually ate their lunches when cheese was involved, solving the problem of wasted food and hungry afternoon students. The cheese came from massive blocks or industrial bags, measured by the handful rather than the ounce. But full-fat dairy carried more saturated fat than nutritionists eventually deemed acceptable for growing children. When federal guidelines restricted the types of cheese schools could serve, cafeterias switched to reduced fat versions that melted differently and tasted less rich. Students today eat pizza and nachos that look similar but lack the indulgent quality that made those meals legendary. Baby walkers without safety brakes were among the most popular baby products in the 1970s, promising parents that their little ones could explore while learning to take their first steps. These wheeled contraptions looked cheerful and exciting, with colorful trays and seats that let babies bounce and roll across kitchen floors. Parents loved how independent their children seemed, scooting from room to room with big smiles and wobbly legs. Nobody imagined that the freedom these walkers offered could turn dangerous in a heartbeat. Without brakes or speed controls, babies gained momentum faster than anyone expected, rolling towards staircases and hot stoves before parents could react. Emergency rooms reported a steady stream of injuries, from broken bones to head trauma, all tied to babies tumbling downstairs or crashing into furniture. Some accidents were far worse, leaving families devastated by outcomes no one saw coming. Investigators eventually documented enough cases to push for strict regulations, and walkers without proper safety features were banned. The cheerful contraptions that once symbolized independence became cautionary tales about how quickly joy can turn into tragedy. Lead-soldered canned foods were once a staple in every pantry, stacked in neat rows that promised long shelf life and simple meal prep during busy times. Grandparents relied on them for soups, vegetables, fruit, and even meats, believing that canned goods were one of the safest and most dependable food sources available. Families opened these cans daily, pouring their contents into pots without ever questioning how the can itself might affect the food. But lead does not stay put when it touches acidic ingredients like tomatoes or fruit juice. It slowly leaches into the food, turning a pantry staple into a silent source of contamination. Doctors eventually traced cases of lead poisoning back to these soldered cans, and regulators moved to eliminate lead from all food packaging. Suddenly, a trusted convenience became a symbol of hidden danger, a reminder that even the simplest products can carry risks no one expects today. Modern cans use safe materials, but the memory of those older designs still raises eyebrows. Thimerosal preserved mascara was considered the height of modern cosmetic science in the 1970s, keeping eye makeup fresh and bacteria-free for months after opening. Women applied it daily, brushing dark pigment onto lashes just millimeters from their eyeballs, trusting that anything sold for such delicate use must be completely safe. The preservative worked brilliantly, preventing the growth of microbes that could cause serious eye infections. Makeup counters displayed these products proudly, and advertisements emphasized their purity and safety. But thimerosal contains mercury, and mercury does not belong anywhere near human tissue, especially not the delicate membranes surrounding the eyes. Small amounts absorbed with each application, building up over months and years of faithful use. Some women developed sensitivities, irritation, and mysterious symptoms they never connected to their makeup routine. When regulators finally acknowledged the dangers of mercury in cosmetics, thimerosal was banned from eye products entirely. The mascaras that once promised beauty and safety became cautionary tales about trusting labels too completely. Lead crystal drinkware was the pride of many grandparents' dining rooms, displayed behind glass cabinets like sparkling treasures reserved for holidays and special guests. These glasses caught the light beautifully, chimed with an elegant ring, and made any family gathering feel just a little fancier. People assumed that something so beautiful, so refined, must also be harmless. But lead does not stay locked inside crystal. It slowly dissolves into whatever it touches, especially acidic drinks like wine or fruit juice. Over time, researchers discovered how toxic lead exposure truly was, especially for children, and suddenly those elegant glasses did not seem so harmless anymore. The bans followed as new safety standards forced companies to retire lead from anything intended for drinking or eating. Today, those glasses sit mostly unused, reminders of an era when beauty and danger sometimes shared the same shine. Partially hydrogenated vegetable shortening was the invisible ingredient that made everything in the cafeteria taste better, richer, and more satisfying than it had any right to be. Cooks used it for frying, baking, and greasing every pan that produced the foods children loved most. The shortening came in large containers beside industrial stoves, scooped out by the cupful and melted into recipes passed down through decades of school food service. Nobody questioned it because nobody knew there was anything to question. Trans fats extended shelf life, improved texture, and cost far less than butter or other alternatives. The cookies were flakier, the pie crusts more tender, and the fried foods crispier because of this single ingredient that touched nearly everything on the menu. But scientists discovered that trans fats raised bad cholesterol while lowering the good kind, creating a cardiovascular danger that lurked in every bite. When evidence became undeniable, regulators banned partially hydrogenated oils entirely. School kitchens had to reformulate everything, replacing the shortening that had defined cafeteria cooking for generations. The foods remain, but they taste different now. Mercury thermometers for infants were standard equipment in every medicine cabinet during the 1970s, slender glass tubes that parents slipped under tiny arms or held gently in small mouths to check for fevers. The silver line inside rose and fell with reassuring precision, giving families a number they could trust when deciding whether to call the doctor. These thermometers felt reliable and essential for any parent trying to care for a sick child. Nobody thought twice about the liquid metal sealed inside the glass because mercury was simply part of how thermometers worked. But glass breaks easily, especially in the hands of restless, feverish children who squirm and cry. When a thermometer shattered, tiny silver beads of mercury rolled across counters, sank into carpet fibers, and evaporated into air that families continued to breathe. Mercury is a potent neurotoxin, and even small exposures can harm developing brains in ways that might not appear for years. Regulators eventually banned mercury thermometers for home use, replacing them with digital alternatives that carried no hidden risks. It is unsettling to realize how casually families once placed poison inches from their babies. Flammable aluminum Christmas trees were once a dazzling holiday trend, shimmering like something from the future and reflecting the glow of colorful lights. Grandparents loved how bright and modern they looked, turning living rooms into sparkling winter displays. But underneath the beauty was a danger no one fully understood at the time. These trees were often paired with rotating color wheels and hot electric bulbs, all placed dangerously close to thin metallic branches. If a wire sparked or a bulb overheated, the aluminum surface could catch fire in an instant. Whole trees went up quickly, giving families little time to react as decorations turned into flames. Many people only learned the risk after tragic holiday accidents led to national warnings. Regulators later banned the most dangerous models and required strict fire safety standards for anything with metal components. Today, these trees serve as a reminder that even the most cheerful traditions can hide real hazards when safety takes a backseat to style. Chloroform-laced hair tonics were considered essential grooming products in the 1970s, sitting proudly on barbershop shelves and bathroom counters in homes across the nation. Men and women rubbed these tonics into their scalps, believing the cooling sensation meant the product was working, penetrating deep to strengthen roots and add shine. The smell was sharp, but not unpleasant, a chemical sweetness that people associated with cleanliness and care. Barbers applied it generously after every haircut, massaging it into scalps while customers relaxed in leather chairs. What people did not know was that chloroform was already recognized in medical circles as a dangerous substance capable of causing liver damage and even cancer with prolonged exposure. Every application released vapors that drifted into lungs and lingered in poorly ventilated rooms. By the time regulators connected the chemical to serious health consequences, countless people had already absorbed years of exposure. The bans arrived swiftly once the evidence became undeniable. Those bottles that once represented sophistication now stand as chilling examples of how dangerous substances once hid behind promises of beauty. Canned fruit swimming in heavy syrup was a cafeteria staple that made fruit feel like dessert, each spoonful glistening with sugary liquid that pooled at the bottom of the bowl. Peach halves, pear slices, and fruit cocktail arrived in industrial cans that lunch workers opened before portioning the contents into small dishes. The syrup was thick and sweet, the kind of liquid children instinctively drank after finishing the fruit itself. Schools served it proudly because it counted as a fruit serving, checking a nutritional box without requiring the expense of fresh produce. Parents assumed their children were eating something healthy because the word fruit appeared on the menu. But those heavy syrups contained enough added sugar to rival candy, turning what should have been a wholesome choice into something far less innocent. When regulators examined the sugar content hiding in school fruit servings, heavy syrup became an immediate target. Today, canned fruit in schools must be packed in water, natural juice, or light syrup containing a fraction of the sugar children once consumed without question. The fruit tastes different now, less like a treat and more like what it always should have been. Loose-fitting crib sheets were a quiet hazard that nobody in the 1970s thought to question, because fitted sheets for baby mattresses simply did not fit the way modern parents expect. Mothers tucked corners under as best they could, smoothing fabric across mattresses that never quite matched the dimensions printed on packaging. The sheets bunched, shifted, and pulled free during the night, creating folds and pockets of loose material inside the crib. Parents checked on their babies and saw rumpled fabric, assuming it was nothing more than evidence of restless sleep. But loose sheets can wrap around tiny faces, cover mouths and noses, and create barriers to breathing that infants cannot escape on their own. The danger was invisible to exhausted parents who trusted that a simple piece of fabric could not possibly cause harm. Suffocation incidents mounted over the years, and investigators traced deaths back to bedding that had come undone. Safety standards eventually required fitted sheets to grip mattresses securely, with elastic strong enough to stay in place. Families remember tucking those sheets repeatedly, never realizing how close they came to tragedy with every corner that slipped free. Cereal boxes with actual toys inside were the ultimate treasure hunt for kids. Every morning, siblings fought over who got to dig through the cereal first, hands plunging deep into the box for a plastic ring or tiny car. The toys were part of childhood, as iconic as the cereals themselves. For companies, it was genius marketing. Sell sugar and joy in the same package. Parents saw harmless fun, and kids saw magic. But buried in all that excitement was a small, overlooked danger. Toys small enough to swallow, hidden in the very food they ate. But behind the fun was a danger no one saw coming. Some of the small prizes caused choking incidents, and regulators finally cracked down. What began as clever marketing turned into a public safety issue. The toys disappeared, replaced with paper coupons or codes printed inside the box. Breakfast lost a bit of its magic, replaced by the dull reality of safety regulations. For parents, it was relief. For kids, it was heartbreak. Those little toys might have been risky, but they also represented the wonder of growing up in a world that felt just a little more free. Talc-based baby powders with asbestos contamination were trusted by parents across the nation during the 1970s, sprinkled generously onto infants after every bath and diaper change. The soft white powder felt like pure comfort, absorbing moisture and leaving skin silky smooth. Mothers dusted it into creases and folds, believing they were protecting their babies from rashes and irritation. The scent became synonymous with clean, healthy infants, and no nursery felt complete without a container sitting beside the changing table. What parents never imagined was that some talc deposits sat naturally beside asbestos deposits in the earth, and mining operations did not always separate the two. Microscopic asbestos fibers mixed invisibly with the powder, drifting into the air with every shake of the container. Babies inhaled them. Parents inhaled them. The particles lodged deep in lung tissue where they remained for decades. When researchers finally connected contaminated talc to cancer, the devastation was immense. The product that symbolized gentle care had been quietly carrying one of the most dangerous substances known to science. Gas-powered lawn edgers without safety shields were once considered the secret to a perfectly crisp yard, used proudly by grandparents who took real pride in a clean edge along every walkway. These machines buzzed loudly and kicked up dirt like miniature construction tools, and people loved how sharp and professional the results looked. Homeowners guided them along sidewalks and driveways, never thinking about what flew out from beneath the spinning blade. Without a safety shield, stones, sticks, and chunks of debris shot outward at high speed, often straight toward the operator. Eyes, legs, and even passing children were at risk whenever the edger hit something hidden in the grass. Some families learned the danger only after a sudden injury made them rethink their weekend yard routine. Regulators eventually required safety guards, and the older versions disappeared from stores. Looking back, it is unsettling to realize how casually people once handled a tool that could send debris flying like tiny missiles. Lead-painted nursery furniture filled baby rooms across the 1970s with bright yellows, cheerful blues, and soft pinks that made every crib and changing table look like something out of a storybook. Parents carefully selected these pieces, believing the vivid colors would stimulate their babies and create a warm, welcoming space for their newest family member. What nobody realized was that lead hid inside those beautiful colors, waiting to flake off into tiny chips that curious babies would find and place directly into their mouths. Lead poisoning does not announce itself loudly. It builds silently, damaging developing brains and nervous systems in ways that might not appear for years. Children chewed on crib rails during teething, rubbed their fingers along painted edges, and inhaled dust particles that settled on sheets and blankets. By the time researchers connected lead exposure to developmental delays, countless families had already unknowingly harmed the children they were trying so hard to protect. Regulators banned lead paint for consumer products, but the legacy of those cheerful nurseries lingers as a painful reminder of how danger can hide behind the brightest colors. Before energy drinks or sports beverages, there were jungle juice barrels, tiny plastic jugs filled with sweet fluorescent liquid. They were cheap everywhere and perfectly sized for a kid's hand. The The foil tops peeled back with a satisfying pop, releasing a sugary scent that screamed childhood. You could buy a handful for the change in your pocket, clutching them like treasure all the way home. The colors, bright blue, cherry red, electric green, felt alive, like liquid candy glowing under sunlight. Kids would trade flavors at lunch tables, sipping victory through tiny straws. But those bright colors and low prices came at a cost. The dyes used in some batches were later found to violate safety standards, and the thin plastic barrels posed choking and contamination risks. The Food and Drug Administration cracked down, and the barrels disappeared from stores. Still, everyone who grew up in the 90s remembers seeing them stacked in pyramids at grocery entrances, 5 for $1, glowing like treasure. It was the drink of summer camps, playgrounds, and birthday parties. Today, the thought of drinking one might make adults cringe, but for a generation of kids, that syrupy taste still feels like home. Lawn jarts with steel-tipped points were one of the most beloved backyard games of the 1970s, sold at department stores and set up on lawns across the country every summer. The game was simple. Toss a heavy, pointed dart toward a plastic ring on the ground and see who could land closest. Families played for hours, children ran barefoot through the grass, and nobody stopped to consider the weight of metal sailing through the air above their heads. The darts were designed to stick into the ground on impact, and that sharpness made them dangerous beyond measure. When a child ran into the path of a throw or a dart sailed off course, the results were catastrophic. Emergency rooms reported skull fractures, puncture wounds, and deaths that devastated entire neighborhoods. Parents who thought they were giving children harmless outdoor fun found themselves facing tragedy instead. After years of mounting injuries and highly publicized fatalities, the federal government banned lawn jarts entirely. Stores pulled them from shelves, and families quietly threw them away. It remains one of the clearest examples of how something designed for joy can carry a danger no one anticipated. PVC teething rings softened with phthalates were a staple in every 1970s diaper bag, squishy toys that babies chewed on for hours while their first teeth pushed through swollen gums. Parents loved how soft and flexible these rings felt, believing the gentle material was perfectly designed for tender mouths. The bright colors and playful shapes made them irresistible to infants who grabbed them and immediately began gnawing. What nobody understood was that the chemicals making the plastic so soft were slowly migrating into every bite. Phthalates, used to make rigid PVC pliable, leached out whenever the rings were chewed or warmed. Babies absorbed these chemicals through their mouths daily, and researchers later discovered that phthalates could disrupt the endocrine system, affecting hormones that guide development. The revelation shocked parents who had trusted these teething rings without question. Regulators moved to ban phthalates from children's products, forcing manufacturers to reformulate toys that seemed harmless. Those soft, colorful rings that once soothed crying babies became cautionary reminders that chemicals inside everyday products can carry consequences nobody sees until science catches up. Butter-flavored margarine was a 1950s wonder, spreadable, cheap, and promoted as a heart-healthy alternative to butter. Housewives embraced it as the modern choice, the sign of progress in every kitchen. Its golden color and smooth texture promised indulgence without guilt. It was advertised in bright magazines beside smiling families and spotless kitchens, the perfect picture of American prosperity. Scientists and companies alike told the public it was the smarter fat, a scientific marvel that separated them from the old-fashioned ways of their parents. But science back then cared more about selling innovation than testing its safety. The secret behind its miracle formula was trans fats, the industrial oils hydrogenated to stay solid at room temperature. For decades, Americans slathered their toast and fried their eggs in it, believing they were doing their hearts a favor. Then the studies came, and the truth was hard to swallow. Trans fats were worse than the butter they replaced, clogging arteries and shortening lives. By the time it was banned, it had already shaped the diet of a generation. Butter-flavored margarine was more than a product. It was a lie sold with a smile. Aerosol hairsprays with chlorofluorocarbons were the finishing touch of every carefully crafted hairstyle in the 1970s, holding curls, waves, and elaborate updos firmly in place for hours. Women stood in bathrooms surrounded by clouds of fine mist, pressing down on nozzles until their hair felt stiff and perfectly sculpted. The hiss of the can became synonymous with getting ready for work, dates, and special occasions. People trusted these sprays completely because they worked, delivering hold that no liquid product could match. What nobody considered was where those propellant gases went after they left the can. Chlorofluorocarbons drifted upward through the atmosphere, slowly destroying the ozone layer that protects life on Earth from harmful radiation. Scientists eventually connected everyday beauty routines to a global environmental crisis. The bans came as part of an international effort to save the ozone layer, and the hairspray industry scrambled to reformulate. Those cans that once represented glamour now symbolize one of the most dramatic examples of how personal choices can have planetary consequences. Those shiny silver balls that once sparkled on Christmas cookies were more than decoration. They were tradition. Every family had them, tucked away in a jar beside colored sprinkles. They were called silver dragées, tiny metallic orbs that made cakes and wedding desserts shimmer like jewelry. In the glow of candlelight or under frosting, they looked almost too beautiful to eat. And, as it turned out, they were. The Food and Drug Administration banned them after discovering the metallic coating contained real silver, which is not considered edible. For years, bakers had sprinkled actual metal onto desserts without realizing the potential health risk. It was not toxic in small amounts, but the government could not take chances. By the early 2000s, the silver balls disappeared from American stores, relegated to "for decoration only" status. Still, people continued using them secretly, claiming no holiday cookie looked complete without that touch of sparkle. They became a quiet act of nostalgia, a bit of rebellion wrapped in frosting. Even now, older recipe books list them casually, as though nothing ever changed. There was magic in those metallic sweets, a reminder that sometimes beauty and danger can share the same shine, and that not everything meant for the eye should ever meet the tongue. Vintage baby formula with unsafe additives seemed like a miracle of modern science in the 1970s, offering busy mothers an alternative to breastfeeding that promised complete nutrition in a convenient powder or liquid. Parents trusted the labels and the pediatricians who recommended specific brands without hesitation. Formula feeding became normalized as families embraced products that fit into faster-paced lifestyles. What most parents did not know was that early formulas contained ingredients that would never pass modern safety standards. Some formulations included sweeteners, preservatives, and stabilizers that researchers later linked to health concerns ranging from allergies to developmental issues. Regulations governing baby food were far less strict, and companies assumed that ingredients safe for adults must be safe for infants. Babies consume these formulas daily, absorbing whatever chemicals manufacturers chose to include. When stricter food safety laws arrived, many additives were quietly removed or banned outright, leaving parents who had trusted those formulas feeling betrayed. It is troubling to realize that feeding a baby once carried hidden risks nobody understood until science caught up. If any of these banned baby items stirred a memory or sent a chill down your spine, share your story in the comments, tap like to spread the word, and subscribe so you never miss the history hiding in your own family's past.